Big move, and it's probably not going to get as much press as it probably should because obviously the Euros are starting today, and that's the main focus. Duh. But it is something that should definitely be talked about, at least in passing, and kind of assessed a little bit because, to be honest, the fact that I haven't run since I came here to visit my family, it's a crisis. It's a national crime. In my defense, I'm afraid of the fact that Florida is too hot for me to run. But fine, you're right. I should be running, but whatever. I'm going to distract you with the fact that Aiden Terzic has left Borussia Dortmund. That is something that I did not see coming. All I know about this guy, right? And I feel like he's one of the lesser known managers at the very top level, right? All I know about this guy is that he came up through Borussia Dortmund. He's basically a lifelong Dortmund fan. So why on earth would he be wanting to leave after he's led Dortmund to a Champions League final? That is basically the investigation I wanted to conduct. I was confused when I saw this headline. It was described somewhere as a shock departure. Fabrizio Romano, because he tweets every 3 minutes and has for years. I'm pretty sure Fabrizio has like 3 different dudes with Twitter and a trench coat. But he translated the official statement, which was posted on Borussia Dortmund's account. It said, "Dear Borussians," this is from Terzic, "even though it pains me greatly right now, I want to inform you that as of today, I will be leaving BVB. It was a tremendous honor to lead this club to the DFB Pokal victory and recently to a Champions League final. After our final in Wembley, I asked the management for a conversation because after 10 years at BVB, including 5 years in the coaching team and 2.5 years as a head coach, I feel that the upcoming restart should be led by a new person." What I have since discovered is that this sort of thing, which you're probably not surprised by this, does not happen in a vacuum. Somebody who's a lifelong fan of a club, who ascends to a level that they could probably only dream of for most of it, leading them to a Champions League final and a cup victory, deciding to leave on his own accord, right? I believe this is a mutual departure that is not dissimilar from Julian Nagelsmann leaving Bayern Munich. I do not think that Aiden Terzic was flirting with a reporter or more, but I do believe that this is one of those things where I don't think Dortmund thinks Terzic is a bad coach. I don't think Terzic has any ill feelings towards Borussia Dortmund as a club. I think there were just some personal things going on behind the scenes that made this situation untenable. And for a further investigation into that, I would like to defer to The Athletic. They sum it up rather brilliantly in this paragraph. It says, "But to examine this period purely through the narrow lens of what happened on the pitch neglects the wider context. Dortmund is not a harmonious club. For all the cheerful marketing in the public saw in London and the wonderful support at Wembley, there have been divisions for some time. And a human story that has been told since the beginning of time. We're just looking at a couple of people that don't like each other. Specifically, Edin Terzic and Sebastian Kiel, who is the club's sporting director. Now, anytime there is a feud between a manager and a sporting director, that's obviously going to cause problems. It became public knowledge that apparently Terzic was upset with the way the transfer business was conducted last offseason, and there was actually a firing of Slaven Stanic. As The Athletic says here, he left the club in December 23 after 6 months. He was one of Kiel's assistants. The club denied rumors of a falling out between Stanic and Terzic and insist his departure occurred on good terms. But Stanic issued a statement saying he could not perform in his role because integrity, respect, and trust are valuable, which is the sort of statement I would expect a 4th grader to release after they've been kicked out of the lunch table that they were sitting at for the last 4 months. Pretty petty move by this dude Stanic, honestly. If you're going to call somebody out, call somebody out. Don't just throw out a vague statement about the fact that integrity, respect, and trust are valuable to you. And that integrity is why you're going to put out a vague statement about your integrity and how it was somehow challenged at Borussia Dortmund. Like, kindly either, say who you're going to say was causing the problem or shut up. But I will assume that it was Edin Terzic, right? Because where there's smoke, there is fire. There seems to be a lot of smoke around the fact that Terzic and Kiel's staff and Kiel in general were not necessarily getting along about the way that they're going to handle the transfer business and so on and so forth. And that also neglects something else that was glaring for Edin Terzic. And that is that Borussia Dortmund and people like Kiel and people like Stanic are probably upset with Terzic because Dortmund's been pretty bad in the league. I mean, that or domestically in general, the DFB Pokal victory was in December, was in 2021, I believe. It's been a while. Borussia Dortmund has been pretty damn impressive in the Champions League and pulled out some amazing results. And obviously, they played really well in that Champions League final. If Karim Adeyemi remembered to bring his finishing boots to the yard that day in Wembley, they might have actually won the whole thing, right? But they didn't. But you look at what Borussia Dortmund's tried to accomplish domestically. Bayern got dethroned. I mean, who in their wildest dreams would have thought it would be anybody other than Dortmund to finally dethrone Bayern after all the times that Dortmund knocked on the door? You had last year's absolute bumbling heartbreak in the final day of the season. All they needed to do was win the match. They pulled up to a cool, like, discombobulated fifth place finish behind, Leverkusen, Stuttgart, Bayern, obviously. But I mean, they were out of it, right? There was this dramatic exchange going on at the top of the table, and Borussia Dortmund was out of the picture. They also haven't managed to win a cup, since Terzic immediately took over. It's just not been the smooth sailing ride that a culmination in a Champions League final would suggest. And so there is clearly some discontent from the Dortmund side. I'm sure that is what Stanic was leaning into before he left, and Kiel was leaning into. And Terzic is sitting here looking at it going, hey, look, I pulled out these results, but not even with, the exact players that I would like to have in this team. So both of the sides think that they're right, and Terzic decides that, look, there's going to be an overhaul planned and the direction's going to change going forward, and I think it's best if it goes on without me, and so he just decides to dip. Now, what I will say is I commend Terzic for knowing when to walk away. I don't know if he made the right decision, but it is really hard to look at a situation, especially when you're a huge fan of a club, and realize that it is probably best for you to leave. Not necessarily even performances on the field, but just like, this is just not the situation I'm supposed to be in. Human beings, myself included, right? We have a natural ability to just overstay your welcome and everything. Stay one sentence too long in a conversation. Stay one sentence too long filming a YouTube video or something. And he has recognized with confidence that he is going to leave. And I'm going to be honest, even though Borussia Dortmund was not a dominant team in the league last year, they obviously got close or this past year. They obviously got close the year before. They only lost the league by a point to Bayern. Edin Terzic also he just became the most promising coach in the market. So what he's going to get is a couple months off, and the first big club that rolls up and sacks somebody in October because they've gotten off to a slow start is at least going to give Edin Terzic a call. I think he knows what he's doing here. I think he's got his agent and his management team or whoever he's got working with him. He's talked about it with them and decided that it's probably a good move, and he doesn't see that there's going to be a healthy relationship with Kiel or with the club moving forward. But what is also clear, and I do kind of feel bad for him, is that he is absolutely a fan of the club. And so there is a human element to this where I believe Terzic is feeling real pain. Here he is watching the yellow wall kind of serenade him about Dortmund's performances and so on and so forth, and he actually breaks down. This is something that it was tweeted in May, so this is not related to his actual leaving, but I get the feeling even watching this video that he might have known that his time was short at Borussia Dortmund. But this is absolutely, like, it is one of the articles or puts it, whether on ESPN or The Athletic, I can't remember, but they talk about how it had been in the wind for a while. Like this news had been swirling for a while, and it is now kind of just, it's become official. There were winds of discontent blowing around, and Edin Terzic was about to get on the move. But regardless, when I saw this, I was shocked, right? Because I maybe had seen one tweet or one story about this move happening at some point, but to have somebody coach their final match in a Champions League final and right as they're rising into the prime of their career, leave the club that they love, the club that they came up in, that's a surprise. That's a shock. Any way that you want to frame it. And I feel like it's an L for Dortmund. I realize Terzic, I don't think he's the best coach on the planet. He's not the best thing since sliced bread. Sliced bread is, right? Maybe toast if we're trying to level it up a little bit. But he just took you to a Champions League final, right? I mean, we just saw Erik ten Hag get rewarded for winning the FA Cup final. What's a Champions League final appearance get you, right? Apparently, you're not able to convince him that you can succeed going forward, and that's why he's leaving at the end of the day. So I think the person that comes out of this looking worse is Dortmund. Obviously, with the whole statement and everything, Terzic has a lot of respect for the fans, so I feel like at least a lot of the fans won't feel super jaded that he's leaving. I'm sure a few of the fans will be happy because there has been discontent about the way Dortmund was playing underneath him, disjointed, defensive, kind of grind it out. Same sort of things that were thrown at Ole Gunnar Solskjaer when he was at United, where it's like, well, we're not playing beautiful ball, but it's like, well, you're still, like, the results, I guess, are the results are competitive. You can't argue with it too much. But definitely a surprise managerial move that is going to slip under the radar as the Euros begin. So also clever. I don't know if they timed that up on purpose or just got lucky.